We're starting.
Welcome back to the Spicy Take Sports Podcast. Today's the college football edition. We got just me and Colton today. How you doing?
Good, buddy. It's a good day for some college football talk. And we're about 45 minutes from kickoff.
I'm excited.
35 minutes from kickoff. Just kidding. How are you doing?
Doing good. I mean, kind of wish Kentucky wouldn't have gotten beat with Mississippi State last week, but either way, it's whatever.
Either way.
Crap happens. But either way, so we got kind of it seems like a pretty low, a very questionable week, not too many big time games, but we know with the way that college football went this year, it'll probably be a bunch of upsets. So, but to start the show today, I think we're going to start talking about the college football playoff rankings that just came out. First rankings yet, and there's a lot of things that I think were pretty obvious that the playoff ranking was trying to put out there. And I think we each have our little gripes with this, or big gripes.
Excuse me. My biggest thing about this ranking is the Alabama bias. I know Alabama's been this dynasty for years. They've won, 6 of the last 15 or something ridiculous along those lines. And they've been in the last, seems like almost at least every other championship, if not every championship or every playoff, except the matter of 2019. But it's, they lost to Texas A&M when they were unranked. So don't get me wrong, I still have them in my top 4 just because they're Alabama. Yeah, because of that bias. That I'd probably have some too, but it's Nick Saban. They're probably still going to be there. Would I have them at 2? No, I have them at 3, but we'll get that later. Yeah. That's kind of just my thing, and I wouldn't put them 2 yet. They'll be at 2 later in the year.
Yeah, my biggest issue, I feel like, with this ranking is kind of go down to the same thing as you did with the Alabama bias. And I want to first preface what I'm about to say by saying, yes, the SEC is the best conference and college football is not even close. I will preface my statement from what I'm about to say with that. That being said, the amount of SEC bias that is being put towards these rankings, and not just at the top, Alabama at 2, I don't agree with, but they are a top 4 team for me as well. But at least in my opinion, you can make an argument for Alabama at 2. Their only losses to A&M, who is a top 15 team, and if they didn't lose to Mississippi State, then they're probably a top 10 team. So I think you can at least make the argument there. My issue is lower on in the rankings where you see teams that they shouldn't be ranked where they're ranked. They just shouldn't. Kentucky at 18, sure. That's not too egregious. Mississippi State at 17. Yes, Mississippi State beat Kentucky last week, but they also lost to Memphis. The fact that they're 17 is just honestly, in my opinion, prepping up the resume of Alabama. Then you got teams like, to A&M at 14, I think I'd probably have them a little bit lower than that, 16, 17, around there. Auburn at 13. They've lost to Penn State, who got beat by Illinois. They have some good wins. They also have a couple of questionable. Their 2 losses haven't been the best losses in the world. I just don't like that, especially when you have teams like Houston and SMU, who are 1-loss teams in the AAC, completely left out of the top 25, as well as a undefeated UTSA. Obviously, I'm not saying they're playing the greatest schedules, but to say they're not top 25, in my opinion, is a little bit iffy when you have Mississippi State at 5-3 at 17.
Yeah, it's you and I were talking about this before the show. It's so crazy to have UTSA unranked, and then in RJ Young's ranking, they're 11 above Alabama, 11.
I'm not saying that far, but I think UTSA should at least be 23, 24, around there. If Fresno State at 7-2 is 23, I don't see how UTSA being undefeated is not ranked.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you should. I think they should at least be ranked. One
How is
team. I mean,
BYU? How is BYU at 15 and they have 2 losses?
I don't even know, to be honest. That's so odd. But
Like,
just
then-
one team that's kind
Mhm.
of so one team that's kind of been under the radar that I forgot about is Minnesota. I mean, they had Tanner Morgan, who's probably one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the country that came back for his senior year. And then they played a good first game against Ohio State, and they
Mhm.
looked like they had a chance to win. They were down by 1 touchdown
They just
driving, and then their star running back got hurt. Mohammed Ibrahim, right?
He was playing
Yeah,
out.
he got hurt out for the season. Yeah. So I mean, if he would have stayed healthy in that game, who knows what could have happened? They could have won the overtime. Could have beat Ohio State.
Mhm. And then they had one bad loss afterwards, but they've caught their stride lately, and
Look good.
yeah, they did.
If they went out and beat Wisconsin, then they'll likely be in the Big Ten championship game.
Mhm. I will say the last big issue I have with this top 25, and I'll ask you if you believe the same way I do. I'm not sure if you do or not. We haven't really discussed this part. Do you believe that it should be a bigger deal to win a head-to-head game but have a worse loss, or have a better loss but beat the teams you should beat? My situation in that is Oregon and Ohio State. Oregon beat Ohio State, but Ohio State's loss was to Oregon, while Oregon lost to Stanford, who lost by 45 last night.
To Utah, who is
Not very good.
unranked.
Yeah.
Utah's unranked.
Do you believe that head-to-head should matter more, or do you think that the worst loss should matter more?
So I feel like it's very situational, but I feel like the head-to-head 9 times out of 10 should matter. But this is the one time out of 10 times I feel like it should not matter, because Oregon lost to Stanford. Excuse me. Who got beat by 45 points at home to Utah, who I believe has at least 2 losses on the season.
They do, yeah.
So it just seems
They have 3.
they have 3. They have 3 losses on the season. Even better. So yeah, I said at least 2. 3. Yep. 3 losses on the season. And you get absolutely throttled. Yet you had enough juice to beat Oregon, who was a top 5 team in the country. Who right now is 4th in the country. They do not deserve to be in that top 4 when you're looking at Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State even, and then Oregon. Oregon does not even deserve being the top 6 in my opinion, but
So
I don't know.
let's get into that real quick. Who would be your top 6 if you were ranking them, and your ranking was the one that held all the merit?
All right, so I'm gonna go from 6 down. So right now at 6, just because they've survived from the skin of their teeth, and they're just a Power 5 school, and I guess I gotta give them some sort of credit with Caleb Williams at quarterback. I gotta go OU. Gotta go OU at 6. I think they're gonna lose soon. They should have lost multiple times already. They should have lost to Kansas. They should have lost to Nebraska. Had a chance to potentially lose Nebraska. They should have lost to Tulane if Tulane made a first down, 4th and 1 driving. They had a chance to lose multiple games.
What was it? They almost lost to Texas.
They came back from about 17 down in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They should have lost Texas. At 5, I got Cincy. You gotta give them credit. They've been undefeated all year. They've looked pretty solid. I mean, yes, they haven't had the best schedule, but they have probably one of the best wins in college football right of the second. I mean, they went to South Bend, Indiana, and beat the 10th. Well, they're 10th now, but they weren't 10th then. They were 7th, I believe. And then I believe Cincy was 9th. In the AP at least. They went to Notre Dame Stadium and won by 2 touchdowns, by 13 points. And it wasn't just we just scored a late touchdown to kind of pad up the score. It was a dominant 13 points. So I believe that since he's at least deserving a 5th. And I think if they got a really good chance to make the playoff, in my opinion, I think they're going to likely win out. And, I mean, I think 2 SEC teams will probably be in the playoff. But I think the Big Ten is going to beat each other up. I think the Big Ten is seriously going to, give each other some haymakers towards the end of the year, and that may cost them. But my number 4 is, speaking of Big Ten, Ohio State. Yeah, so I was saying that 1 time out of 10 times where the team who lost the head-to-head actually gets the advantage just because their strength schedule will be better once they get to the end of the year. And Oregon lost to a team who can't get over that. Got beat by 45 at home to a 3-loss team. That's just absolutely ridiculous. And Oregon lost to them. So that's Ohio State at 4. Yeah, they lost at home to Oregon in early September. But I don't know. I think Ohio State's they flipped the switch. They look good. CJ Stroud looks really solid. And he looks like he's ready to lead this team to the playoff. Will they? I'm not really sure. I think Michigan State has something to say about that and a few other teams in that conference. But I got to get number 3. As a Georgia fan, that kind of pains me to say it, but I could go Alabama. They're not deserving of 2 yet. Will they later in the year? Probably. But right now, they're not deserving of the 2 spot. They're at the 3 for my opinion. I mean, I think Bryce Young's good. I think he's going to be a stud. I mean, he already is a stud. He's going to be a star. Maybe not even this year, maybe next year. But, Alabama just has so many 5 stars, and they got the best coach of our generation, Nick Saban. And they're likely going to be in the playoff. It's probably going to be, a 12-1 Georgia and a 12-1 Alabama in the playoffs. So wouldn't shock me in the slightest. But also, I have at 2, a team coming off of a 2-touchdown deficit at home to their arch rival Michigan is Michigan State, who looks pretty good, honestly. I mean, they really impressed me on Saturday. I thought they were dead in the water, and I thought Michigan was about to run up the score on the way that first half is going. So for them to bounce back and come down and keep fighting, they look great, and their defense has maybe a little work on. I mean, you got to work on their defense bench, but other than that, they have potential, and that's kind of what we're looking at right here because we're just trying to predict the future. So, number 1, team kind of have my chest, Georgia. Yeah, they still look like the best team in the country, and I'm getting rumors that JT Daniels is starting quarterback today. So,
it's honestly not.
What?
Not even close, honestly.
Yeah, he was. I heard that Kirby was planning on playing JT in the second half since the game was so close, before Georgia went for 21 points in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But then once that happened, Kirby knew his defense was good not to give up 3 touchdowns, so he just let Bennett go out there and hand the ball off most of the time. He didn't want JT to get hurt.
It's smart. I mean, Georgia's by far the best team in the country. I think it's been close. I mean, there's not been anything that's shown that they're not one of the best teams in the country. Not the best team, I should say.
Yeah, they got a generational defense. They're only giving up 6 points a game, 5 or 6 points a game, something along those lines.
Something like that.
Georgia has scored more off turnovers. Actually, they've scored 12 points more off turnovers than they have given up points.
When Kentucky's offense is putting up the most points against your defense, it's been a weird season. So.
Yeah, then that was 13 points.
And that
South Carolina and Kentucky.
The last one was not even worth anything. But my top 6, mine's similar to yours. I agree. Oregon's not in my top 6. My 6 is Oklahoma. I think, even though I think they're going to lose pretty soon too, they keep cutting it way too close. Then they keep getting by the skin of the teeth. I don't see that continuing. They've got Oklahoma State coming up later on this year. I just don't see them losing, winning out. But I do see them at 6. I think you got to give them props for being undefeated right now. My number 5, I'm going to go Ohio State at my number 5. I think that they're probably going to be in my top 4 at the end of the year. But I just don't think that they've done enough for me to put them back in my top 4. My number 4 is Alabama. You got that one loss to A&M, but I still think they're a top 4 team. I think they're probably the second best team in the country. I I think they're probably the second best team in the country. I think that Ohio State's probably the third best team in the country. But when I'm doing my rankings, I'm not just trying to base it solely on who the best teams in the country are. I'm basing it based off who I think is the most deserving. And I think Alabama and Ohio State each have a loss. They should be lower ranked. I got Cincy at 3. I mean, everyone's whole thing with the group of 5 was if you're gonna make the playoff, you got to play somebody. And they beat Indiana pretty handily, who actually gave Michigan State a run for their money, who is number 3. They beat Notre Dame, who the committee has ranked at 10 in South Bend, by 2 scores. And then they've not really struggled with anybody except for Navy, which Navy, I still kind of give a pass there because Navy's just a weird team. They can beat or lose anybody at the same time by a bunch because they just play that weird triple option.
True option's just hard to defend. You don't see it hardly often. There's only maybe 3 or 4 or 5 schools that do it now. Even Georgia Tech stopped it, so that's how you know.
Exactly. So like you have one game like that you come close to losing to Navy. I don't hold that against them. I have them at 3. I have Michigan State at 2. I think that win against Michigan was very impressive. Michigan's been a lot better than I thought they would actually end up being this year. I think the committee has them at 7 a little bit high. I'd probably have them below Wake Forest and Oklahoma, but don't mind them at 7 too bad. I think they've been very, very good. They almost beat Michigan State, but Kenneth Walker is a stud. And he reminds me a lot of Ezekiel Elliott. I mean,
yeah, that's fair.
We see what Zeke did when he was in the college football playoff. He led Ohio State to come back and to pull off the upset to win the whole thing. But he reminds me a lot of him. But I have a Michigan State at 2, and then Georgia my number 1. My biggest gripe was just with Cincinnati at 6. The reason I have them at 3 is I feel like they have no chance to make the playoff at this point. I feel like when they're getting put at 6, if they would have been put at 5 or 4, I think that they at least would be shown that they have a path to make that spot. My issue is when you have Ohio State at 5 above them, even if Ohio State beats Michigan State, do you really think Michigan State's going to drop below Cincinnati? If Michigan State beats Ohio State, yeah, Ohio State will drop, but then they're still holding on to that one of those top 4 spots. And the only way Cincinnati really gets in is if Oregon loses. Plus, you're going to have either Oklahoma. You have to probably both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State lose. And Wake Forest probably has to lose. All of them probably have to lose for you to get in if you're Cincinnati. I think that's not right.
Yeah, but I think Michigan State needs to beat Ohio State because if Michigan State has 1 loss and Ohio State has 1 loss, they both have a better chance of getting in.
Exactly.
Like Cincinnati.
That's the only chance that Cincinnati really has to get in the playoff is if Alabama takes a second loss, Ohio State takes a second loss, Oregon takes a second loss, and then Oklahoma and Oklahoma State both lose. At least one. They each lose once. And you have at least a debate between do you put Cincinnati, who you have ranked above Oklahoma, both undefeated, or do you put Oklahoma, who's in the Power 5? It's just,
even if Oklahoma wins by like 1 point the rest of the way, they're still going to put in Oklahoma.
Exactly. That's why I don't like having Cincinnati at 6. I feel like you've got to I feel like what they've done, they've scheduled teams, they've beaten the teams they've scheduled, and to be honest, do I think the Big 12 is that much better than the AAC this year? Not really. I mean, do I think the ACC is better than the AAC this year? Not at all. I think that you're going to have Cincinnati end up being the 5th team ranked at the end of the year. Even if I think they're going to go undefeated, but you're going to end up seeing a 2-loss Alabama getting over them, in my opinion. Which is sad. I don't think that should be the case, but I have a feeling it's going to be the case.
You think Bama's going to play a close game in Georgia and lose?
Yep. It's going to be a very close game. Georgia's going to pull it off, and then they're going to still put Alabama in over undefeated Cincinnati.
If that happens, they need to change the playoff format next year.
I mean, they're trying to go to that 12 team, but then they put the 12-team playoff on hold once the realignment started happening. So, I mean, it's questionable. I don't like the way they ranked them. I feel like there's a lot of inconsistencies. I mean, it's
I
just,
just want the explanation for Oregon. That's my biggest thing. Oregon does not deserve to be in the top four.
yeah, I would have expected Oregon to be 7 or 8. I mean, I know that Ohio State, they did beat Ohio State. They probably have the best win of anybody. I get that,
They have the
but
worst loss.
they have the worst loss of anybody.
Yep.
In fact,
They
they're
have the worst
4-8
loss.
currently. Like, I would have much rather had a Cincinnati or an Ohio State over Oregon. Shoot, I even taken Oklahoma over Oregon. Like, it's just, I don't like it. Well, either way, we've already got our gripes out there. So now we're going to go into this week. This week is considered a pretty down week with college football, but we should know by now it doesn't matter. There's upsets throughout. What's your game of the week and your upset of the week this week?
So this week's a little odd, not gonna lie. So right now I think my upset of the week, this is more kind of a shot in the dark. Actually, this really isn't a shot in the dark. I think I'm actually kind of confident this game will happen. I think West Virginia is going to beat Oklahoma State. It's in Morgantown. Morgantown's been kind of a tricky place to play. I mean, West Virginia's always been one of those teams that can beat anyone and lose to anyone. You said Navy's that way. West Virginia is the epitome of that. They literally they'll turn around and beat Oklahoma State. Next week they'll lose to Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way this team's been. I mean, West Virginia, they beat Virginia Tech when they were ranked, and
They
then
also should have beaten. They almost beat Oklahoma too.
Yeah, and then they should have beat Oklahoma. They lost to Maryland. They lost to Texas Tech. Got destroyed by Baylor. I mean, they beat Iowa State when they were ranked and when they were good. So I don't know. Iowa State isn't what we thought they'd be, but at the same time, I mean, at the time they were solid. So I think West Virginia pulls it off in Morgantown against Oklahoma State. Kind of ruins Oklahoma State's season. Oklahoma State, they always get their season ruined by lesser teams constantly. What's your upset of the week?
I've actually got 3.
Wow.
I know this week looks like a very quiet week, but I have 3 upsets that you're gonna laugh probably at one of them, and you're gonna understand the other 2.
I think I know, and I think the team starts with a P.
I see what you're talking about. That one's one I was thinking about, but I don't think I'm gonna go with it. But
Okay, keep going.
my biggest upset, I think the one that's going to make the biggest impact in the college football playoff, I think Washington upsets Oregon.
Wow.
Washington's got the talent. We've never doubted they can't talent. They just don't play it. They just have not put it together. You know they're going to come together against Oregon. And remember, at the beginning of the year, everyone was saying it's going to be Oregon and Washington in the conference championship game. Here's your chance. Here's your chance, Washington, if you want to go out and upset them. So
Yeah, this is basically a championship game.
I think Washington upsets Oregon. I just have a weird feeling. I don't think Oregon's very good. They still don't have the quarterback situation ironed out. I don't think Oregon's very good. I think they're going to lose 2 more games this year. I think Oregon is. So I think this is the first one of this.
9 weeks into the season, how do you not have your quarterback? Well, I guess saying that Georgia doesn't. What Georgia does, he's not healthy.
But. My second upset. I wouldn't really call it too much of an upset. I'm going to go with Auburn upsetting A&M. This will really affect Alabama's whole college football playoff number 2 ranking if A&M falls to Auburn, but I think it happens. I know that sounds funny, but I think Bo Nix is finally starting to get it. Took long enough, but I think he's finally starting to get it a little bit. And I think they beat A&M. I'm still not sold on A&M. And then my upset, I think you're going to laugh the most at. I think Liberty beats Ole Miss.
That's spicy. That's your spicy take.
Malik Willis makes himself known, and Hugh Freeze gets revenge on Ole Miss.
That's fair.
Could I easily see Ole Miss winning this by 4 touchdowns? Absolutely. But do I think it's going to happen? I think Liberty beats them by 10 points.
You know,
I mean, Corral's coming up.
My mistake.
Huh?
But
Corral's coming up a little bit banged up. And if Corral's not 100%, I think that hurts Ole Miss tremendously. Their defense is garbage. And if you have the Ole Miss defense trying to defend Malik Willis, it could get really kind of nasty.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, I'm gonna stick to my original upset pick, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. But one game, at least on put on upset alert, is a game I mentioned. Michigan State's traveling to Purdue, and Purdue against second-ranked teams that have a winning record. Not really necessarily about third-ranked teams, but that is a death wish for undefeated teams in November.
I'll say
Just
this.
ask Ohio State what happened a few years ago.
And I'll say this: you look at the spread of that game, it's only Michigan State 2.5-point favorites. So I think Vegas also has that same thought too.
Yeah, they know what happens in Purdue in November. They've seen it. They're aware.
Weird, but it just happens.
And Michigan State's coming off a huge win against one of their arch rivals. It's a trap game, basically.
If I'm not mistaken, that's exactly what happened with Purdue when they beat with Ohio State when they beat Penn State, if I'm not mistaken. Then they go to Purdue and they get their butts blown out.
And they get beat by almost 30. No, they got beat by 30.
Yeah. One other game I would say I would say watch. I don't think it's going to be an upset, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people are giving it credit for. I think Nebraska puts a fight up against Ohio State. I mean, Nebraska's 3-6, but they're the best 3-6 team in the country. I can guarantee that. They've lost to some really, really, really good Big Ten teams by less than a touchdown. They're a lot better than I think their 3-6 record shows. I think they do lose, but I think it will be about a 10 to 13 points. I don't think it's going to be 25, 30 points as some people think.
I mean, they lost to Oklahoma by a touchdown, so I think they're pretty solid. I think they're starting to. They're 3-6, but in my mind, they're starting to trend in the right direction.
Yeah, that begs the question. Do you think that Scott Frost has saved his job, even though they're 3-6? Do you think he's saved his job with how they're playing at the end of the year? Or do you think he's gone still?
110%, he saved his job.
You think so?
If he beats Ohio State, his job's 100%.
Oh yeah, if he beats Ohio State, let's say he loses to Ohio State. Do you think if they end up the season they 4-8, but they've played this well at the end of the year, do you think they keeps his job or do you think he's gone?
I think if he plays a close game against Ohio State and then goes out there and beats Wisconsin and beats Iowa, who are both ranked, I think his job's saved. If he goes out there and loses and gets demolished by Ohio State and loses to Wisconsin and Iowa, and neither of the three games are close, I would say there's a great chance he's gone. But if he competes in every game, I think you may have to bring him back. It's so hard to recruit in Nebraska. I mean, ever since they were one of the teams in the 90s, they haven't been able to recruit, and that's why they've been down for so long.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
what's the draw to come to Nebraska?
Exactly. I mean, look at their schedule. They lost it at Illinois. It's not a good loss, but Illinois did just upset Penn State at Illinois. They beat the crap out of, I don't know who that is. Same with against Buffalo. They lost by a touchdown at Oklahoma. They lost by 3 points at Michigan State. They beat Northwestern by 49. They lost at home against Michigan by 3. Lost at a ranked Minnesota by 7. And lost at home against Purdue by 5. They've literally not lost by more than 7 points. No, they're not lost by more than 8 points all season. So I really feel like his job is safe myself. I think what we're seeing is a team that is young and upcoming. And usually in that first year of a young and upcoming team, they usually lose those close games, but they show the talent they have. And that next year they come out and they play better in those close games.
A prime example of that is 2016, Georgia was 8-5. Curtis Smart's first year. The next year they went 13-2 and lost in the national title game.
Another one for me is Scott Frost's first team at UCF in 2016.
Oh, right, yeah.
2016, they went 6-7, but they had lost a bunch of games very close. But you saw the talent they had, and then the very next year they go undefeated. I'm not saying that Nebraska's going undefeated next year. I'm just saying I could see Nebraska winning 8-9 games next year the way they've played. And they literally could extremely easily have 5 or 6 wins right now, extremely easily.
Before we did our podcast this morning, we're looking at these matchups, and I was like, not really many teams are gonna win, but I'm excited for that. I just feel like there's magic in the air. It's college football. Who knows what's gonna happen?
Exactly.
With this crazy season, who knows?
I mean, there's not any games that are obvious. Like, we gotta watch these games. I think the best one of those is probably Auburn A&M. But there's a bunch of games here that you're gonna see people tuning in halfway through the game because they see, oh wait, they're, let's say Indiana is up beating Michigan right now in the third quarter, or something like that's gonna happen. In my opinion, that we're gonna have a few games that we're gonna be like, wow, I didn't expect that to be a big game, and it's actually going on right now. So I'm excited for this week. I think we're gonna see some upsets. I really do think Liberty pulls off the biggest of all the upsets. And I think Malik Willis cements himself as the top quarterback picked in the draft.
Do you think Malik Willis has enough potential to be a quality NFL quarterback, or do you think he has to sit behind someone? I know that we're not doing an NFL podcast, but real quick, I just wanted to throw this out there. So Kyle Trask had a really good year for Florida last year, and guess who he's sitting behind in the NFL right now?
Tommy Terrific.
Who?
Tommy Terrific, Mr. Brady.
He's sitting behind the GOAT.
Yeah.
So just imagine what he has the ability to do. He has the skills. Now he has the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out.
Yeah, I will say I think Malik Willis needs to have a guy that, I wouldn't say he can't start year one in the NFL, but I would say they need to have a guy that's a good mentor that's willing to take a step back. Like, I would honestly love to see him in Philadelphia. I think he's kind of like what Jalen Hurts is, but more talented, has a better arm. I mean, Malik Willis, in my opinion, has a much better arm than Jalen Hurts does.
Yeah.
And I think Jalen Hurts is a good leader, but I would like to see him there. I would also like to see him in Indianapolis. I know that Carson Wentz is having a very good year, but I would like to see him in Indianapolis. I would like to see what him and Jonathan Taylor could do together. And Carson Wentz is one of the best humans in the NFL. So I think Malik Willis is the best quarterback in the draft. I think he's got a ton of potential. He kind of reminds me of a Lamar Jackson light and the type of athleticism he has, and that he actually does have a little bit better of an arm. But I think the number one thing with him in the NFL is, will a team be willing to build a offense around his skill set, or will they make him try to fit into his skill set? That's the best thing that's happened to Lamar Jackson is John Harbaugh said, you know what, screw this offense we have right now. We've got this dynamic talent here. Let's make it about him. And right. I think you'll have to do the same thing with Malik Willis. If not, then I think Carson Strong is going to be the better quarterback. But I'm high on Malik Willis. I think Hugh Freeze has made his offense at Liberty a lot just perfect for Malik Willis, which is why I think they're going to score 49 points tonight on Ole Miss. I think it's 49 to 41 final score. Wow.
I think probably one of the best games, if you ask me what the best game is, I think tune into that Wake Forest North Carolina game. That's a great chance for North Carolina to win that game. North Carolina is actually favored by 2.5 at home against a 8-0 9th-ranked team, which is absolutely disrespectful.
It's disrespectful,
but it has potential to be a really good game with the talent that UNC has. Huh?
It's disrespectful, but understandable.
Understandable. Wake Forest, I think, is overrated for sure, but I mean, they're 9th in the country and they're there for a reason. But North Carolina has a lot of talent.
I think their record is underappreciated. I think that the team's a little bit not as good as their record shows, though.
Yeah, and North Carolina they were one of the dark horses, in my opinion. You and I talked about this. They're one of the dark horses to make the playoff at the beginning of the year, and now they're sitting at 4 losses, only 9 weeks into the season. Potentially probably going to be 5.
They could get hot, and they could end up 8-4, and could be a completely different situation. But either way, last thing we want to kind of touch on before we head on to watch some football. Heisman favorite right now. Who are you going with?
I think you and I may have the same one. I'm going Kenneth Walker, running back, Michigan State. I think right now, if he just plays like he's been playing all year, they're handing him the Heisman Trophy in New York, without a doubt. He is just playing out of his mind right now. I mean, he played a really, really solid. I wouldn't say great. I wouldn't barely even say good. I'd say solid Michigan defense, and he just basically ran all over him. I mean, he looks good. He just looks like a different cat out there. Yeah, I mean, you said he looks like Ezekiel Elliott. I see it. I mean, he kind of has that body type, and if he goes out there and puts up 100 piece with 30, 40, 50 receiving yards against Ohio State, and they win that game,
2 or 3
oh, he's
touchdowns.
probably already won the Heisman Trophy.
Oh yeah, he's my favorite as well. I think he's probably my favorite. If I had to go with another guy as well, I would probably, honestly, I think it's his to lose, but I'd probably go Matt Corral just because his stats are insane right now. And if he can continue to win and say that he can pull off a big time moment, then I think he gets a chance. But Kenneth Walker, I think, is his to lose. I also think CJ Stroud could be in there as well. I think my honest prediction is whoever wins that Ohio State Michigan State game, either CJ Stroud or Kenneth Walker will win the Heisman, depending on who wins it.
Wow.
Because CJ Stroud, if you look at his statistics since that game against Oregon, he has been phenomenal, which just surprised me. I thought he was going to be kind of a rough freshman, but he definitely has proven me wrong. He had that one rough game against Oregon and Minnesota before that, but ever since he's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think CJ Stroud also has potential. I mean, that's a really good take. I feel like whoever wins that game, Michigan State and Ohio State, can probably win the Heisman between Stroud and Walker. I think it's Walker's to lose, like you said. I have no doubt in my mind that right this second, he's the favorite. But I don't think Bryce Young is going to win it. I mean, he's kind of – that A&M game just kind of has like a bad taste in my mouth still, honestly. He just not good.
I mean, Bryce Young, I think his issue, honestly, in my opinion, is he's kind of just another guy on that team. He's not exactly the guy that's kind of carrying the team. Which most of the time when you win the Heisman, it's not because your team is not usually the best player on the best team. Last year, Devontae Smith's statistics were absolutely ridiculous. That's the reason he won it. But most of the time, your Heisman is not going to be on the best team. It's usually going to be a team that's got a loss or two, or if they are in the playoff or whatever, it's because that they don't have as much talent. But that guy's carrying him. When you look at a Manziel, you look at a Robert Griffin III, guys like that their team had 1 or 2 losses, but they had a couple of big time moments, and without them, they would have not even won 7 or 8 games. But yeah, excited for this week. I'm hoping that we come back next week and I'm saying I called it about Liberty. That's my one I'm holding on to the most. Liberty and Washington. Come on, I'm rooting for them.
Yeah, I'm gonna sing "Country Roads Take Me Home" and then hope the Boilermakers keep churning and keep blowing smoke, and maybe they'll knock off Michigan State, and then Kenneth Walker may not win Heisman.
That being said, Kentucky needs to beat Tennessee. I'm hoping for the best. I have a bad feeling about it, but let's hope so.
Yeah, I mean, every time Kentucky, they'll be undefeated or with 1 loss, and then they'll play Georgia, and then they'll just collapse.
Yeah, that's probably going to happen again tonight, but we're going to hope for the best. But either way, till next time, we're going to have a NFL podcast out pretty soon and predicting this week, and you'll be having a big rant from me. If you're looking forward to a rant, you'll have a big rant from me as a Vikings fan about this past week and how horrible that was. So if you look forward to that, tune in for that. But until next time, peace. Go Cats.